Hi, good morning, and welcome to another series of my podcast, Rumination with Andrew. Now, this morning I got up at 2 o'clock and, was doing some meditation, and then I hit the newspapers and I was reading, and there's so many things happening in our world. And this particular news title or, title of this article caught my attention. And I thought of sharing this information with you because we're living in some very, very dangerous times. And it is very difficult right now to sleep and understand, to have in your consciousness that there are thousands of people who are dying unnecessarily. And I'm saying here unnecessarily because we know that war is not necessary. If human beings can come together and they can, in an amicable manner, in a respectful and civil manner, decide to negotiate some sort of peace agreement. One of the things that is very, very ironic is that as a citizen, as a civilian, if I have a beef, right, an argument, a conflict with, a fellow citizen, whether it's, whatever type of argument that might be or conflict that might be, the government would never set me free if I just go, let us say that I want to shoot my enemy or my combatant, my rival in crowded traffic, right, on the road. I mean, if I shoot and I kill, innocent civilians, I am sure the government would definitely put me in prison unless I had very, very close connections with the higher officials. But what we're seeing here is that the government, the US government particularly, right, and the other members of other countries who are supporting this sort of atrocity in the Gaza area, we see that they are not concerned about killing innocent lives. What they're more concerned about is that they are successfully wielding their power and their dominance in the world. Now, that to me is something that we need to, reflect on. It means, therefore, that the government, if it deems somebody a terrorist, and it could be in the West too, and that, alleged terrorist is on the streets, in the road, in the traffic, that the government perhaps has the right to shoot and ask questions afterwards, right? And we have to think about these things because this is the type of world we're living in. And sometimes we think that these occurrences are far-fetched because they don't happen frequently. But this is the new normal, all right? The new norms that we are witnessing in the world, particularly after the events of September 9/11, right? After September 11, 2001. Now, let me let me jump into the weeds of our discussion this morning. I'm going to open up with, let me share my screen. I'm going to open up with Chalmers Johnson's third chapter. And he has quoted in his third chapter, well, he talked about toward the new Rome, that's in chapter 3, right? Because remember now that the Bible said in Revelation 13 that this beast is the image, the land beast, which is the United States of America, is an image. It is an image, direct image of the sea beast, all right? So when the United States is calling itself the new Rome, it is fulfilling prophecy. They don't even know that they are fulfilling what God had said centuries ago, right? Now, he is quoting here, that's Chalmers Johnson in his book, Sorrows of the Empire. Ian Fleming, doctor number, which is, doctor, is it number or doctor, 1958. It says here, it's the same old dream, world domination. Right? So that is the quest of any empire in the world. It's world domination. And we talked about the infinitive, the Latin infinitive imperare, which means to dominate, to control, to subjugate, right? So these are words that we need to bear in mind, that the purpose of any empire is to dominate. Now, here, Chalmers is writing something very powerful. He says, in the American political tradition, empire has normally been a term of opprobrium. President Ronald Reagan famously used it to demonize the Soviet Union, which he labeled an evil empire. Since the end of the Cold War, and particularly since the attacks of September 2001, however, the idea of empire has gained traction here. So Americans are beginning to see themselves as an empire. As Andrew Bacevich, a professor of international relations, describes the change in all of American, I'm quoting from Professor Bacevich, in all of American public life, there is now hardly a single prominent figure who finds fault with the notion of the United States remaining the world's sole military superpower until the end of time. And unquote, this is what Professor Bacevich is saying. Now, Professor Bacevich has written also a number of books on the American empire. So, and I think he was a former military conscript. Yeah, sometimes in the night. I think he fought in the Vietnam War. Not since the jingoists of the Spanish-American War have so many Americans openly called for abandoning even a semblance of constitutional and democratic foreign policy and endorsed imperialism. Now, as then, the imperialists divide into two groups. So the imperialists, as we have been saying, the empire is divided into two groups. So you have the right-wing imperialists and you have the left-wing imperialists. Those who advocate unconstrained unilateral American domination of the world, which is we call now the Republicans, that's the idea, that's their ideology, couched sometimes in terms of following in the footsteps of the British Empire, and those who call for an imperialism devoted to humanitarian objectives, right? And these are people who are calling for peace, as we will see in the Politico newspaper article that I will be discussing briefly with you. Now, I wanted, this caught my attention to, everything that Chalmers has written, is poignant and should be emphasized, right? And should be pondered on, right? And I think you need to get a copy of The Sorrows of Empire. I'm not getting any proceeds from it, right? There is no kickback from promoting this book. It's just that I want you to be informed, right? Because there are guys who have given us, who have warned us against this gigantic military imperial. Now, listen to what this Chalmers is saying, and I think he's quoting a writer from the Washington Post. Typical of the former is the widely read Washington Post columnist Charles Crothenmer. After the terrorist attacks of 2001, he celebrated the success of the American bombing campaign in Afghanistan with an article entitled, "Victory Changes Everything." The elementary truth, he wrote, that seems to elude the experts again and again, that's Gulf War, Afghan War, next war, is that power is its own reward, right? The satisfaction of having power to kill and to show people that you are the dominant beast, right, on the market. Victory changes everything. Psychology above all. The psychology in the region, Central Asia, is now one of fear and deep respect for American power. Right? They have the power to kill, right? And to injure as they so desire. Now is the time to use it to deter, defeat, or destroy the other regimes in the area that are opposed to radical Islamic terrorism. So it's almost like he's talking today because in light of what Hamas has done to the Israelis. But even 6 months before the president declared war on terrorism, Crothamer asserted, America is no mere international citizen. It is the dominant power in the world, more dominant than any since Rome. Right? So this is what the newspaper columnist from the Washington Post is saying. Accordingly, America is in a position to reshape norms, alter expectations, and create new realities. How? By unapologetic and implacable demonstrations of will. Just wanted to think, to ponder on this statement that was made by this newspaper columnist and the Washington Post. And this was written from 2001. Right? He's quoting here from 2000. Well, early on after the terrorist attack on 9/11. Now, it's very important that we understand that these politicians are defending their imperial ambitions, right? Their imperial operations. They are no wise are trying to protect you, right? As they say they are. They are just creating a new world, new norms, as the columnist in the Washington Post suggested. Now, I think I'd shared with you before a speech that Biden had given to American citizens from the White House, and this caught my attention again. This particular paragraph. The terrorist group Hamas unleashed pure, unadulterated evil in the world. But sadly, the Jewish people know perhaps better than anyone that there is no limit to the depravity of people who, when they want to inflict pain on others. All right, so as far as Biden is concerned, only the Hamas people are depraved. Even though the military-industrial complex, the U.S. military-industrial complex, that is, has destroyed and has displaced, right, many people around the world, its military is not depraved. What it has done in the world, particularly after 1945, is not depraved. So this is what you need to understand, that some people are going to be sanctimonious. They are the ones who are going to be the saints. Those who are in control, those who are dominating, those who have the power, the dominant power to control your lives. They are the saints, and nothing that they do is faulty or can be subjected to criticism. Okay, so that is something that we need to bear in mind. Did I lose my article here? Oh, yeah. Now, I read this morning, this is what I read this morning. Biden, a ceasefire is not peace. So this caught my attention this morning. What does he mean that a ceasefire is not peace? Because I think the purpose of a ceasefire is to be able to stop the war, to put a pause on the war, at least for now, and then get into the diplomatic negotiation, right? Try to find some way of, getting some solution, formulating some solution, right? Arriving at some solution to the problem of what is happening in the Gaza area. But Biden is saying, that's the president of the United States is saying, a ceasefire is not peace. Well, as I think I agree with him on one, that it is not peace. It's because peace will never be in this world. right? Because the Bible says when they say peace, peace, and sudden destruction will come upon them, and they shall not escape, right? Because once we have people of different divergent views, which we all have divergent views, we have conflicting views, and we have different temperaments, right? That there are people who are just not going to like peace. No, there are some people who have absolutely no peace at all, right? Because they don't have the fruits of the spirit. And one of these days, we should look at the fruits of the devil, which is the world, the fruits of the flesh, and distinguish it between the fruits of the Spirit of God to see that it is totally different. But let us see what this article is saying here about his comment that a ceasefire is not peace. President Joe Biden reiterated his opposition to a ceasefire in Gaza in an opined published in an op-ed published Saturday, in which he also lamented the high cost to Palestinians and laid out his vision for a two-state solution. Right, so he's opposing to a ceasefire. As long as Hamas clings to its ideology of destruction, a ceasefire is not peace. Now, how do you know that they're clinging to their ideology? If you don't go to the table, the negotiation table, to ask them, right, to question them, to interrogate what was behind, what motivated them to have done such a horrific act as what they did in the Hamas area, in the Gaza area, to the Israelis rather. Biden wrote in a Washington Post opinion piece detailing the challenges presented by the wars in the Middle East and Ukraine, right? So even as many Democrats in Congress have called for a ceasefire and questioned the Israeli offensive, Biden has remained adamant that Israel is exercising its right to self-defense and has instead supported humanitarian causes. Right? So we hear the word humanitarian. And remember now that, as Chalmers was suggesting, that you have two groups. So America is divided, the empire is divided into two groups, right? You have those who believe in the unilateral dominant approach, where you impose your power upon the other any other country because you have that military might. And you have those who think that they are humanitarian, but they're doing the same thing. Right? Because even within the party, the Democratic Party, Biden is not listening to those who oppose this war and would like to see a ceasefire. Right? And notice that Hillary Clinton is of the same impression. She has the same ideology that a ceasefire is not peace, and if you have a ceasefire, you are showing the other side, you are showing the Hamas side that you are weak and that you're not willing to fight. So these are like two bullies trying to see who will dominate the other. Now, it's one thing when you have two bullies because they are the ones who will probably get some knocks, right? And maybe a few people might also be victims. However, you have hundreds of thousands of people who are going to be victims of this war. This is nothing that we should take lightly. These pauses, which were implemented last week, are designed to allow Palestinians to flee the hostilities and seek out food and medical care. Biden said he was heartbroken by the thousands of civilian deaths in Gaza and blamed Hamas for using Palestinian civilians as human shields. The road to peace, the president wrote, must lead to a two-state solution. How is that going to happen if we just consider not to talk, if there is no negotiation? So I think his understanding, if you are looking beyond what he says, is that the two-state solution will be achieved by bombing the Hamas or whomever might oppose to the to the way how they are doing things in Israel, right? Our goal should not be simply to stop the war for today. It should be to end the war forever. Now, even families cannot end wars forever. We have very conflicts. We have many conflicts between family members, right? And that will never end. It's human nature, right? To war, to fight. So Bible suggesting here that it will that he will stop, he will end wars forever, is wishful thinking, is delusional, as far as I'm concerned. Break the cycle of unceasing violence and build something stronger in Gaza and across the Middle East so that history does not keep repeating itself. Well, history always repeats itself because we are human beings, right? And as far as I'm concerned, as long as this earth exists, or as long as it is here, and we have sinful human nature, I think that history will always repeat itself. Doesn't it always repeat itself? I think it always does. I just had some comments here, some statements that were written in the 19th century by Ellen White. And he says here, the tempest is coming, and we must get ready for its fury by having repentance toward God and faith toward our Lord Jesus Christ. The Lord will arise to shake terribly the earth. We shall see troubles on all sides. Thousands of ships will be hurled into the depths of the sea. Navies will go down and human lives will be sacrificed by millions. Fires will break out unexpectedly and no human effort will be able to quench them. The palaces of earth will be swept away in the fury of the flames. Disasters by rail will become more and more frequent. Confusion, collision, and death without a moment's warning will occur on the great lines of travel. This is very, very interesting because it could also mean in the air, traveling on planes. The end is near. Probation is closing. Oh, let us seek God while he may be found. Call upon him while he is near. And this is coming from Messages to Young People, and we have pages 89 and 90, and this was written in 1890. Now we have another statement from Maranatha, page 174, and this was written in 1897 by the same author, Ellen G. White. And she wrote with such clarity, with such precision, right? And we can see here that there is much wisdom in what she said in her first statement, rather. Let's now go to her second statement. In the last scenes of this earth's history, war will rage. So, and we are living in the last days. But he says in the last scenes, and I think we are witnessing, perhaps, I believe, the last scenes of Earth's history. There will be pestilence, plague, and famine, right? And pestilence here means diseases, right? Well, the waters of the deep will overflow their boundaries. And you really wonder when you see lots of storms and, I was looking at a particular heavy showers that happened here in Santo Domingo recently. And also, I saw recently also one in Brazil, the south of Brazil, where the people woke up to their entire community underwater. The waters had risen so high that it seemed to have covered their houses, if not most part of their houses. So they have to vacate, or some of them might have died, I'm sure, because the waters were really, really high. It shows you that this is occurring much more frequently and with greater intensity. Property and life will be destroyed by fire and flood. We should be preparing for the mansions that Christ has gone to prepare for them that love him. Right? So if you think you have lots of money in the banks, if you think you have lots of property and you are safe outside of the arms of God, you think that these things can make you happy and that these things will, bring you joy and peace, you'd better think again. Now, here is a statement that she wrote. We're not now able to describe with accuracy the scenes to be enacted in our world in the future, but this we do know, that this is a time when we must watch on prayer, for the great day of the Lord is at hand. This is coming from Selected Messages. I think let me just read this last one here, because I think this one, the plagues of God are already falling upon the earth, sweeping away the most costly structures as if by a breath of fire from heaven. Will not these judgments bring professing Christians to their senses? God permits them to come that the world may take heed, that sinners may be afraid and tremble before him. And this is Manuscript Releases, Volume 3, page 311. This was written in 1902. Right? So God showed her some of the things that would take place in the last scenes of Earth's history. And we've better take stock. Now, let me end here with Psalm 2, and I think I will read verses 7 to the very end, to 12. I will declare the decree. The Lord hath said unto me, Thou art my son. This day have I begotten thee. Ask of me, and I shall give thee the heathen for mine inheritance, and the uttermost parts of the earth for thy possession. Thou shalt break them with a rod of iron. Thou shalt dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. Right? And he's talking about the kingdoms of the world, these kingdoms that behave as if they're so dominant and that they control the world and behave like God themselves. Because right now, the United States is behaving like she's God herself, and she's the one who is going to determine what is peace or what is not peace. And she's going, it means that she needs to bomb people to kill them so that she can achieve her own goal of, a full spectrum dominance, then she is willing to do that. Be wise now, therefore, O ye kings. And the kings here means prime ministers, presidents, and all leaders of different kingdoms, right? Of different nation states. So be wise now, therefore, O ye kings. Be instructed, ye judges of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear and rejoice with trembling. Right? So that they need to humble themselves before God, understanding that the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. That is from Psalm 24. The Bible is beautiful, and if we only read it and understand, we would understand that we need not to fear these so-called kings and princes, right? Because they're just dust. Right? They flaunt their wealth before you, but at the appropriate time, God is going to bring them down to the dust. Kiss the Son, that's the last verse, lest he be angry and ye perish from the way, when his wrath is kindled but a little. Blessed are all they that put their trust in him. Right? So as we see the wars are raging, and there will be many more wars and many more rumors of wars, let us understand that we need to pay respect and homage to Christ, who is our Lord, and that we need not to be afraid of these earthly leaders. Respect them, but we ought not to pay homage to them, right? We need to respect their position because God is the one who sets them up and he also puts them down. So I urge you to pray for your leaders and most importantly, to pray for the people who are dying needlessly in the Gaza area and other parts of Ukraine and other parts of the world, understanding that we are all human beings and that very soon what goes around comes around. Thank you so much for joining, and I'll see you in another chat in another